instead of like being attacking the problem or being frightened of it and hiding from it, you're like, hello, problem. I'm curious.
Why are you here? What do you want? How can I help? Or I even heard a meditation of asking fear why it's here, asking fear why it's in your body. And it was such a revealing, because normally we get away from fear.
Yes.
But fear also has a message.
Intuitive Leadership Mastery, the podcast for entrepreneurs and leaders like you who want to double profits and half stress by improving your business intuition. Learn how with your host, Michaela Light.
Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Esther Jacobs, and we're going to be talking about positive problem solving, even when you're sick with COVID, which she actually was. She had a whole bunch of problems come up. So we'll learn about that during the show and all the great problem solving methods she has and why they're critical to your business. In case you don't know Esther, she is a world famous author. She's written, 25 or
30-ish books.
30-ish books. Wow. And she also runs writers' retreats. And that's where this problem occurred. Also, you may not know about Esther. She got knighted by the Queen of Netherlands for raising 16 million euros for charity. And she did that without an organization. It was quite amazing. And she's done lots of other amazing things, which you can read in the show notes in her bio section. So welcome, Esther.
Thank you. Very happy to be here. You look very sunny today.
Yes, lots of sun, and my webcam's a bit fuzzy, so we're just going to take that. We problem solved that earlier. It's just like an amazing screen filter, so I look younger. But let's just start off by, maybe some people listening, haven't really thought about why problem solving is so important for them as entrepreneurs and for their staff. Why is problem solving so important in business?
I think because problems are part of life. You can try to control everything, but there's always something going wrong and always in a direction that you didn't anticipate. So entrepreneurs know this because entrepreneurs are more flexible than most employees, not everybody, but in general. And most smaller organizations are more flexible than the larger organizations. And that's just because they can react more quickly to things that happen, good things, bad things, opportunities, threats, problems, challenges. So they are part of life, both private and business. And the less scared you are of them, the more confident you are that you will be able to solve anything that you find on your path, the more flexible you are to navigate, to step into new opportunities, to take risks, and to feel confident in uncertainty that we live in, actually, in the world around us. Everything is uncertain.
It does seem to be this year more so.
It always
has been.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's all true. And I would also add in one of the values we add in a business to our customers is the ability to solve their problems in a joyful and efficient way. So the more we can solve problems, the better value we can provide, the more profit we make. So I think that's another aspect.
Even when something goes wrong and a client has a complaint, I've learned that when you solve a complaint well, then you get a more loyal client than a client that's never had a problem with your business.
That is definitely true. And I think that we'll talk a bit more about mindset, but seeing problems as an opportunity as well as a problem is a way to get value from the problem and to grow personally and to grow the business. So let's talk about the particular situation when you had a sudden collection of problems all appear at once, like London buses, where you're waiting for half an hour and no buses have come, and then suddenly 3 buses all arrive at the same time. Where were you when this happened, Esther?
Well, I was in a very ideal setting on the island of Curacao in the Dutch Caribbean. I was organizing a writing retreat in a beautiful plantation house. Everything was going well. I was doing my workouts. I was helping my writers. I was enjoying, being there. And then from one day to the next, I got COVID and I got a high fever and I couldn't think or work or do anything anymore in the middle of a retreat.
That's terrible. But that wasn't the only problem, that you couldn't teach the retreat, right? Because you couldn't speak, you couldn't think, right? You didn't have any energy.
Few days I had a fever, actually just 1.5 days. And I thought, I wasn't afraid of COVID. I've been traveling around for 2 years and, it didn't bother me at all. So I wasn't afraid and I thought I would get it. It would be like a flu. So I still have the cough. I had 1.5 days of fever. And what you're used to when you have the flu, after that, you recuperate. So I was waiting for that to happen. But it just took so long. I had brain fog. I was very tired. And then after a few days, the coughing started as well. And then after the retreat was over, at least I helped my writers very well during the first few days so they could continue in the last few days. And I had organized dinners, everything I'd done already beforehand, because literally I couldn't lift a finger. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't think. So after that, I was recovering, I thought, but I was still like brain fog, coughing, not feeling well. And then like all the London buses ran over me. It felt like everything happened at once. I have to share like a little bit of history. My father has Alzheimer's and he lives in Miami, and I travel all over the world, and my siblings, my sister lives close to him. My brother lives in California or Mexico, depends when you ask. And, we can care for him, but the daily care takes more and more attention. You have to be with him the whole day, basically. And care in the US is very expensive and very bad. So we had to find a solution. He was running out of money. We don't have a lot of money. So we needed to find a creative solution. So 4 years ago, I wrote a story on Facebook saying, hey, my father lives in Miami. He needs somebody to, be with him, to cook for him. He's pretty independent still, but he needs somebody around. Who would be interested to go to the US on a tourist visa for 90 days and live the dream in Miami? All expenses paid, you get some pocket money. And every 3 months, we got somebody from the Netherlands who thought it was a great adventure, a safe adventure. Ooh. To go to Miami, live with my dad, take care of him. And this is really what I'm always looking for, a win-win-win situation. It was good for us. It was good for my dad. It was good for them. So no catch. Everybody wins. So this was going well. And a few months ago, I accidentally put the ad not on Facebook, but I also posted it on LinkedIn without thinking. And I got 430,000 views, all Dutch people, because it was in Dutch. And there's only like 16 million people in Holland. So it was like, a big part of the Dutch people saw this ad. It was shared thousands of times. I got hundreds of applications. So this time I could actually discuss with my sister, do we want the dietitian this time? Or do we want the personal organizer? Or do we want the person who speaks Norwegian like my dad? So it's, it was picking beautiful people, everybody very motivated, a lot of them with a background in care. So we picked like the next few caretakers. We had interviews with them, and one of them had just arrived in Miami. The old caretaker onboarded her, the old caretaker left, and the new one was there for 3 days. And then she called my sister and said, I have to go. There's something going on in Holland. I have to leave. And my sister said, oh, wow, that's a big thing. Let me call you back in an hour and we'll discuss what we can do. And she sent me a message, and I was in Mexico by that time, still recovering. I was waking up. I see this message. I'm like, what is happening? So I call the caretaker, and she says, I'm already at the airport. I'm like, what? What about my father? And she didn't answer anymore. I just got this message. So I text my sister. She had to go. She found my father on the sofa, cold, no food. We didn't know if he had his medicine. He didn't know what had happened. And my sister has a family and a job, so she couldn't take care of him. So my brother flew over from Mexico. I had to arrange a new caretaker because I had all these contacts. So I had to find within a day somebody that would drop everything, their life, for 3 months and get onto a plane and fly to Miami. Wow. While I had COVID, while I couldn't speak. And I did it. But at the same time, I also got messages from a new renter. I have an apartment in Amsterdam that I rent out, and I just had a new renter. She was complaining that there were rodents, mice in the house. And she said, if you don't solve it, I'm leaving. Yeah. And normally it's already very difficult to find a handyman in the center of Amsterdam, let alone from Mexico with a time difference, with no voice, with no energy, whatever. And I had to arrange that too. At the same time, I was running a project with a developer for my website from Serbia, and he had disappeared. He changed his phone number, he changed his email, he didn't make any documentation, and he left my website hanging. All these things at the same time. And I was like, why? What? How? Please leave me alone, And yeah, so it was too much. And yeah, so there's different strategies that you can take. And the first one is, of course, pull the blankets over your face and try to ignore it, the ostrich approach. Just pretend the problem is not there. How
does that work? How well does that produce results to problems?
It doesn't produce any results. It makes it worse. So, for example, with my father's caretaker, I couldn't do it because otherwise my sister and my brother would be responsible. With the mouse problem, I could have done it, but then I would have had a house without a renter, and I would have had to find a new renter plus solve the mice problem. And for all the other things, also, I needed to act. So I'm not at home, thank you, I don't take the invitation was not possible. And of course, I also had the natural reaction, why me? Why now? The victim thing. Why does this happen to me? I'm sick. It's not fair. Why everything? But that's also not very productive. And normally I'm a problem solver. Okay, there's a problem. Let's solve it. There's 5 options and we just get to work and we do it. But when you don't have energy, that part of your brain doesn't work. So I really had to crunch and squeeze and just try to take little steps at a time. Okay, I'll send this one text message. I'll send this one email. I'll look up this one thing. But it was really, really a lot. But I did manage to solve everything. But then I just got more sick. I forced myself too much. So I had to take some more time to recover.
Well, I just want to go back to the ignoring problems because it sounds so obvious when we talk about it. Why would you ignore problems? But I myself and many entrepreneurs often do ignore problems, the elephant in the room that just doesn't get addressed. So, I think we should recognize that's a thing that maybe listeners might be doing in some area of their business.
It's a natural reaction. So if you recognize it, hey, this is what's happening right now. I also hear about people or companies with money problems who just don't open envelopes anymore. That's the same approach. You're not confronted with the problem, but it doesn't go away.
Yes. Yeah. And then the victim mode is quite common in society where, why me? And also part of that is blaming others. It's not just poor me. It's also trying to say, well, this is someone else's fault, which may or may not be true, but it doesn't actually help solve the problem. So
so with the caretaker, for example, my sister and I, we were like enraged, how can you leave somebody that you're responsible for and not communicate? And why is this happening? Why did she do it? But by focusing on this caretaker that had disappeared and that didn't communicate with us anymore, we were not solving the problem. And because I had so little energy, I had to choose, how do I spend my energy? Maybe normally I would have like gone after the caretaker, to get justice, or not that it would solve anything, but you're so frustrated by what had happened that, it's a natural tendency to look at the external, the cause of something. But because I didn't have energy, I told my sister, listen, this is a situation. We have to deal with it. It's not fair. It's incomprehensible, whatever, but we have to solve it. So that was actually an advantage of having very limited energy, that I very early on had to make that choice. After a day of being frustrated and focusing on the caretaker, I was like, okay, this is not productive. Turn around and focus on what is productive.
Mm.
You're listening to the Intuitive Leadership Mastery Podcast. Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. And now, back to today's show.
So let's talk a bit more about taking action, because that seems like a good way to start to get results, but it can also, I think, be counterproductive. So tell us about that.
Well, actually, because so many things happened at the same time, I was like, there must be a message in this. And I don't get the lesson or the message, because there was so much, so big in so many areas of my life, in so many places in the world. There must be a message that the universe is trying to tell me. I just don't get it. And sometimes I have sessions with a somatic coach who helps me to listen to my body, because I'm a doer, so I'm always in my head. So I booked a session with her just to try to make sense of what was happening. And something very interesting happened. During that session, I became aware that when ugly things happen, we usually use them as distractions. So either we get angry, or we ignore them, or we step over them and try to find a solution. But we hardly ever really look at the ugliness that is happening and see what the message may be. So I decided to do an experiment, and I started with the COVID, because the virus was still in my body and I could feel I was not getting better and it was pulling me down and I didn't know what was going to happen. So I could visualize the little virus parts as like little animals in my bloodstream. And I asked them, why are you here? I just wanted to know, what do you want, And just asking the question already gave me like a huge relief, because I was not fighting against it. I was not trying to ignore it. I was not trying to get over it. I was just having a conversation. And I never thought I would get an answer, but I did see those little COVID parts. They were very confused and they were surprised by my question. And they kind of clung to me and they said, we don't know what we're doing here. We don't know. Where else should we go? Nobody wants us. They were asking me for help. And I was like, wow, that's a big thing, right? They're confused.
Yes.
And in their confusion, they're clinging to me. So then I thought, hey, can we make a deal? Now you're inside me, inside my cells. What if we make a deal that you can go to another part of my body? And I was thinking of my little pinky, and you just stay there and you don't bother me, then you can stay there. And they were like, okay. And I felt like, this pressure in my pinky. And I was like, oh, maybe that's not good for my pinky. And I said, oh, wait, let's do something else.
Yes, good idea. I did some healing with this faith healer called John of God in Brazil once, and he cured a cancer patient the same way. He put all the cancer into their little finger. But at that point, he got a knife out and cut off their little finger. So I'm just saying, don't do that approach, people. Though it does work. The person was cured of cancer. They just were missing their little finger.
That's a good trade-off. But I think I found another solution. So I didn't want them inside me. So I said, can you go to the surface? And they were like, yeah, but if we do that, then you just want to get rid of us and we don't know where to go. And I was like, no, I promise I won't do that. So they agreed to go to the surface. So I had kind of a solution, but I felt that I could go further. And I was thinking, the virus is in fact very unique because they find the weaknesses in your cells and they can get into your cells. So if we don't consider them a threat, but we see their genius, that they see the weaknesses in the cell, and we ask them to use their genius, I actually asked them if they wanted to coach my cells by saying, hey, there's a little crack here. We could get in there. We won't do it, but please fix this. And suddenly the virus was like empowered. They were recognized for their power and they became the coaches of my cells. So that's the deal I made, a win-win-win situation. And I had never done this before. And I was just as surprised as you are, or listeners maybe. It was just an experiment. And I don't know if it made any sense, if it had anything to do with this. But the next day I started to feel better. And ever since,
it had something to do with it, Esther.
Yeah, I'd like to hope so. But if not, it's still a nice story, right?
But it doesn't really matter, is it scientifically provable or any of that? You felt better. So for you, it worked.
And also the feeling that I wasn't fighting. I wasn't fighting against something that was fighting back against me. I opened the conversation. I paid attention to, a possible message. There was a conversation and there was no more fighting and power and force and resistance. It was just more of a flow after that.
Yeah, so I think that helps. And, just to be clear to folks listening, that we're not saying this is what you should do, but asking the problem itself, why is it here, or how could you help me, are all good approaches. Because people may get a disease and they talk to their disease and they get a totally different answer. So just clarifying,
and I never knew that you could ask a question to something that you're scared of or something that you're bothered by or
absolutely
that you're fighting. It's such a relief.
Yeah, it is. It's I do that with bacteria or virus. Like in my tummy, if I have a tummy upset or diarrhea, I'll talk to the bacteria in my intestines. Just tell them tell them I'm not feeling well, which they may have realized, and ask them to keep the party down if they're having a good time down there, turn down the music a bit, guys. And usually what I hear back is these cute little children-like voices like, oh, we're so sorry. We didn't realize we were too noisy. We'll keep the music down, and then I feel better. So, it definitely can help. And there's a book around this topic, if anyone's interested, called The Biology of Belief by someone whose name I'm forgetting right now, Bruce Lipton. And I'll put that in the show notes. But that talks about the science behind how thoughts affect our bodies and cells and can even affect viruses and bacteria inside our bodies. So there actually is some basis to this behavior.
Interesting.
But I do want to illuminate the thing about fighting problems, because I think that's another common reaction people have to problems. They just try to throw every single effort to it. And you couldn't do that because you were sick and didn't have energy in this case. So that's why you went to alternative things. Not that you necessarily try and fight problems other times, but the fighting problems can sometimes be counterproductive because it involves this kind of struggle energy, I think. So instead of flow.
Also, solving the problems like I did, it requires willpower, masculine energy, really the willpower, and it left me exhausted. And when you solve a problem the way I just described with the COVID, you actually get energy from it because it's it's a win-win-win situation. So I've always done business. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always solved problems in this go-getter masculine willpower way. So I'm very good at that. And I know I can do things, but I'm now slowly discovering a way that's maybe more feminine and go with the flow. And I think the combination of those two is very powerful.
Absolutely. Use both. I mean, I don't think it works to just use them. I mean, you can get problems solved the male way, but it just is draining. It causes burnout. It's draining for the person doing it. It's draining for everyone around them. it's the angry, forceful person trying to push something to happen, and maybe they can push it, but it leaves everyone a bit burned out. And I will say the feminine flow, like kind of chant Om and, set the positive intention and then just wait for the money to arrive. Yeah, that can work. It can work. I've seen it, but it's not as effective, So
I think combination is good.
A combination. I mean, it's sort of like, if the male side is the right side of the body and the female side is left, the male side would be like trying to run just on your right leg and not use the left leg at all. And the female method is trying to run just on your left leg and not use the right leg. But a more successful approach is to use both legs.
That sounds logical.
So, and spiritually speaking, some people think that the male and female together combine to form a more divine completeness. And so, by using both, and everyone has male and female parts to their energy. So, by combining both, you get a much more powerful spiritual way to approach things. So, all right. Now, tell us what other thing, you solved you improved your COVID situation, and I hope, best wishes for that improving. And maybe you need to talk to your throat and lungs for this cough that remains. Just a suggestion.
I'll do that. Yeah. So what other things did I do? Well, interestingly, I contacted one of the caretakers who was scheduled to go to Miami later this year. And I asked if she wanted to already go. And she said yes. And she's there now. And
wow.
She wrote a book on creating your ideal desired situation. So now this energy is in our whole family, and they're manifesting, things to happen for my father, and there's no negativity. Everything is set by intention, and then it happens. And so actually by this, let's call it the switch of caretakers, we now have a whole new level of spirituality in.
So it was actually a big silver lining in this person leaving. They opened the space for this better person to be there.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I wouldn't have believed.
So in retrospect,
it was happening.
Yeah, in retrospect, this person you were really angry at, who left, now you could possibly feel gratitude that they created this problem, but the solution was so beautiful.
I would like to try that, but it doesn't come natural.
Well, it might take time. I mean, I sometimes find that, someone was a real asshole and they screwed something up, but then through that things changed and now things are so much better. That's often the case with, employees. You have an employee, they were causing problems, or there were problems that they had that you weren't even aware of until they left. But now there's all this growth opportunity since the problem.
I'm already at that stage with the developer who left.
Wow.
I was really also like, where am I going to find a new developer? And, I always have bad luck with people, the victim mode. And then one of the people from the Dynamite Circle that we're both a member of, Matt Singers, offered to help, and he is like like a guru in the hiring people and matching people area. And he matched me with somebody who's like incredible. And now it's not just a developer, but also help with marketing and other stuff. So actually, by this developer disappearing, I now have a much better solution. It's always just there in between. It's like you feel like you're drowning. And in retrospect, you see that, something better came along.
Now, I just want to go back to, you said you had hundreds or thousands of candidates for this caretaker, but you only had the energy to make baby steps to text people. And you obviously didn't text all 1,000 or however many you had. How did you know which ones to reach out to?
Just intuition. That's how I always pick them. And so far, 4 years, that's been going well. So I reached out to maybe 5-6 people. And some of them responded, 2 days later, and then the problem was already solved. I spoke to one person who was interested, but who wasn't sure. And then in the meantime, I spoke to this person and she said yes. And she was on a plane, and then, it was solved.
Well, that's great. So just to clarify to listeners, the struggle method here would have been to take the energy to contact all 1,000 candidates, right? And then have 1,000 conversations, and then spend a lot of effort and make spreadsheets of all the different characteristics and take a long time to pick the right one. But what you did is pick out 4 or 5 that just stood out to you. And I'll dig into that more in a moment, how you did that. And then just contact those, which was a lot less energy to do. And then the winning one just stood out for you. So coming back to that point, when you had this list of all, inbox or whatever it was of all the prior candidates, how do you know which ones intuitively to pick?
Well, first of all, a very practical one. I got a lot of people approaching me like, hey, I'm interested in the position. Shall I send you some information about me? That required extra work. Yes, please. And then there were people who said, hey, I'm so-and-so, and I'm really interested, and this is something about me. So that's already a practical thing. If somebody immediately offers something of themselves, you can feel their energy. People with standard emails like dear sirs or, something very formal, it wouldn't fit. Some people were really thoughtful and asked about my father, or said that they had like similar experiences and explained how they would like to interact, not too much in the foreground, but keeping an eye and assisting, facilitating. That type of energy works best. And then personality. Some people were very young, like 17, 18 years old, and they considered it more like a field trip, which could work very well. Some people were a lot older, like maybe end of their 60s, in their 70s. So they do have a lot of experience, but, big chance that they're, at some point they will need some care themselves. So because of the situation, I was looking for a little bit older person, like 40s, 50s. And really, this person just stood out. The letter she wrote, her view on life, the personality, basically just the energy, the connection coming from it. And she told me later, because she wrote this book on creating your ideal situation, that she had set the intention that this letter would get her to Miami. So she put the energy in it, and I had my energy radar, and this letter just stood out.
That's wonderful. Now, I do want to, some people may not know how to access their energy radar, and everyone accesses this in different ways. How do you know that one of the people stands out intuitively? Do you hear words in your head? Does their message like shine light on the page?
For
Does
me,
it accidentally
like
drop on the floor to your feet? These are all ways.
Yeah, for me, it's more like knowing and trusting that the right message will get in front of me. So with hundreds or thousands of reactions, I just scroll through it, and then the message that gets my attention usually is, a good one. Or people that don't send me like messages in LinkedIn, but go online, find my email or my WhatsApp and enter through a different method. That also immediately gets my attention. The way they start the message, like, hey, Esther, or hey, Esther and family, or, just talking about them, or I don't know. So how do I know? I just trust that what catches my eye, I need to see. So I don't start, like you say, with an Excel, or I try to read everything, or I try to rate. It's just, hey, this one gives me a good feeling. I'm going to save this one. Hey, this one sounds good. I'm going to save this one. And then I have a short list. And then usually somebody from the short list contacts me like, hey, did you get my message? I'm so enthusiastic. And then that one gets to the top of the list. And if it clicks, I don't need to look at the others. So I'm not making a scientific selection. It's just the things that easily float to the surface will have most of my attention.
So I just want to emphasize to people listening, you may think, oh, well, I don't have a father with Alzheimer's. I don't need to solve this problem. But this method Esther's talking about applies to so many areas in our businesses. Hiring people for a role, picking a vendor, picking a name for a product, all kinds of things where you've got a myriad of possibilities.
Picking a date for a workshop.
Yes.
Anything.
Yeah. So I just want to summarize the method, if I heard it right, which was one, set the intention that you're easily going to find the solution. Secondly, picking up on messages, you're being getting, open. Being open. And then in your case, you hear your intuition through an inner knowing that it just clicks. This is a good one for me to proceed on. Other people may get their intuition other ways. They may, their message may have brighter light. They may get a feeling in their body, a tingle in their tummy. They might hear, all kinds of intuitive ways people get stuff. Or some people might meditate and it comes to them. And then the final component was you trusted this method would work. So you didn't second guess yourself. You didn't worry. And that is something I notice in a lot of people with their business intuition. They don't trust their own intuition. And then, of course, it kind of puts, if you have a machine with cogs, it puts a spoke in the machine and it stops working. So I think that's a great method to do. I write about that in my intuitive leadership book. And it's fabulous that I don't think you've read that book, but you've got the exact same method.
I've heard a lot about it, and I know your philosophy. And it's interesting. Most people talk about intuition in their private life, and they're kind of used to using it. Mothers with kids, or friends, or relationships. But in business, we're not supposed to talk about it. And what you did, you took the intuition that we all kind of know and revealed that we also use it in business and how we can use it even better and even more. And it's so
and how our staff can use it. Like you said, the person you hired in Miami for this actually uses her intuition to make the situation even better. And same in our businesses, when you hire a developer or whoever, you can help them open up their intuition if they don't already access it. Because I personally believe every human has intuition. It's just that in school or through other mechanisms, it gets covered up. And then we have to unlearn all the covering up to release it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And I think it's the most powerful personal development thing you can do, because then you can do anything. You can do any challenge, any development if you have the support of your own intuition.
That's wonderful. Now, let's just talk about solutions that came. Were they things you expected or?
Not at all. No, I didn't expect a caretaker who was scheduled for later to drop everything and to go now. I didn't expect, I was at a conference in Mexico of the Dynamite Circle while these other things were playing in the background. And I thought they were two separate things. And I didn't think the solution for this developer problem would come from, somebody I was at the conference with. If you're open to anything, then solutions may come from unexpected directions. And if you're looking in a certain direction, again, with this masculine willpower energy, then you may not notice that the solution is knocking on your shoulder, or standing.
I think that's a great thing, to be open to unexpected or solutions. And I just bring that to a question I've been popularizing. I didn't invent this question, but I have written a book about it and popularized it, which is what would it take as opposed to how. So what would it take to find a great caretaker for my father today versus how can I find a great caretaker for my father today? What is the
difference in those two questions?
So that's a great question, Esther. So the what would it take question is opening you up to the possibilities. It doesn't mean you have to solve the thing. It doesn't mean you need to know every single step in the solution. It asks, what would it take to have a solution? And you might add, in other words, what would it take to have an easy solution or a joyful solution? The how gets you into the details. Oh my goodness. Well, how am I going to find this person? I don't have any time. I don't have any energy. It totally turns it around into the logical brain and the details of using the how. So there's nothing wrong. I mean, occasionally hows are useful questions, but in problem solving, it's usually not the best question to start with, because it closes down the mind and tries to get you into, what are the steps, as opposed to being open to something unexpected happening and then something else unexpected happening. And
Yeah, that's very interesting. And it's like, how is maybe how we always do it, and what would it take would be opening up this extra layer of positive surprises and possibilities, and a little bit of magic.
Yeah, a little and that seemed to be the approach when you talk to the virus. You wanted to heal. You weren't asking, how can I heal necessarily? What are the exact steps I need to do? Do I need to take this medicine and then that medicine and go to see this doctor and that doctor? And, 43 minutes in the sunbed. And
I was being curious and open because I had no idea what was going to happen. Yeah.
Now that's a great word to bring up. Curiosity is a wonderful attitude to have, because that's another way to open up. Instead of like being attacking the problem or being frightened of it and hiding from it, you're like, hello, problem. I'm curious.
Why are you here? What do you want? How can I help? Or I even heard a meditation of asking fear why it's here, asking fear why it's in your body. And it was such a revealing, because normally we get away from fear.
Yes.
But fear also has a message.
Yes. It does. And there's a famous book on fear that I'm trying to remember the name of, but it had a similar message to that. And when I remember the name of it, I will, maybe it's called The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker. De Becker sounds Dutch, actually. I don't know if he is Dutch. But,
a while ago, like a few generations ago.
Yes, I'll put that in the show notes. But it basically talks about how you shouldn't be hide from fear or be afraid of it, because it's trying to give you a message. Usually it's like, pay attention, might be something to look at here, or maybe there's some past trauma in your life that needs healing, and this fear is, not. Or
you're growing.
You're growing. Yes.
For growth. Yeah.
Yes. Or maybe there's a mugger about to attack you down the street and you should turn left and take another path, Or maybe you shouldn't hire this person because they're going to do something naughty in your business, So it's good to listen to it and talk to it and figure out where it's coming from, but also distinguish between useful fear and fear that's just an echo from, a past trauma, or fear from the news that's full of negativity or whatever. The final thing I thought would be useful to cover, you mentioned it's helpful for you when you're solving problems to take a break. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, that's another thing. You can so you can ignore a problem, you can be a victim, you can go into the action mode, you can talk to the problem. But sometimes it's also useful to take some distance, because some problems solve themselves, some go away. So all this effort you spend into trying to fix it, if you would have taken a step back, not always, but for example, sometimes, I don't have a chance to look at my email for a few days. And then at the beginning of my COVID, there was an email, something needs to be solved, like a small business thing, urgent. And then 5 days later, I managed to open my email for the first time. And it was like, okay, you fixed it, or it went away, or whatever. So sometimes it's good to take a step back, not only because some problems solve themselves, but also it gives you more space for solutions and messages to arrive. Like if you're on top of it, you don't see these things around. And if you create some space, then inspiration, intuition, common sense, the stress is a little bit less, you relax more. So there's more opening for solutions to arrive.
That is a great thing. And on a practical basis, what that might look to listeners is take a nap, meditate for 5 minutes, take a shower, take a walk, get outside away from your phone and computer. Another related method is just explain the problem to someone else. I so often find when I talk through the problem to someone, suddenly I'm like, oh, I could do this.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes.
The other person didn't say anything.
Yes. So all great methods. So I'd just like to finish this discussion. We talked about the male and female method. Maybe the male method's the more logical or rational mind. The female method's more the intuitive, flowing mind. And, bringing them both to bear, be organized with the rational mind, but, be open to your intuition, bringing things in. And the other concept, we learn about the subconscious mind, which is maybe where the intuition lives. There's also a concept in philosophy of this, I believe it's called the supra-conscious mind, which basically means the divine mind. And so connecting with the divine and asking them for help, asking God for help, or the universe, or whatever phrase you want to use. And then also asking any spiritual helpers you have. Maybe you have some guides or helpers in your life. Everyone, I believe, has a guardian angel. But maybe you have ancestor spirits that help you, or animal spirits, or, mountain spirits, or whatever. So, I just want to put that out as an idea. We don't have to solve everything ourselves.
Yeah,
sorry, Esther.
Like going into nature gives a completely different energy and mindset than staying in the city or in your office building. So changing environment also helps.
That is a great point. That can give new perspective on the problem. It's quite amazing. So, and I think that's where going to bed, sometimes if, who's that famous mathematician? Johnny von Neumann. He was I don't know if he won some prizes for math, but he was very famous in the 40s and 50s. He would go to sleep on a problem. He'd think about what the problem just before he went to sleep. He'd have a pad of paper and a pen by his bed. And then often he'd wake up first thing in the morning or the middle of the night, and he'd suddenly have a new inspiration or a new approach for solving it. And I think that's a very common method to do that. So yeah. I put your blog post that you wrote about your experience in the show notes as well. And we put links to your website and everything. And I'm sure people can find all your 30-ish books there. Some great books you've written. Have you written a book on problem solving yet?
No, but my first book was called What is Your Excuse?
Oh, so that's...
a little bit related, and the second one was called Live Your Dream. So anything is possible. So everything I do is related to this theme, because my main slogan or theme is no excuses. They call me the no excuses lady, though I didn't feel like that a few weeks ago when all this happened. But in general, that applies to me and my mindset, lifestyle.
That giving yourself a little name, as opposed to your given name, you've got the no excuses lady. That also provides inspiration for coming up with problem solving. Because if you think, okay, I'm going to pretend to be, what would the no excuses lady say about this? Yeah. Or what would Superman do with this problem? Or what would Harry Potter do with it, or whatever? There's many inspirations to take.
Yeah, being a no excuses lady, sometimes I do have excuses, and then people look at me like, is that an excuse? And I'm like, okay, well, I'll go solve it then. So I can't, come up with excuses because, it doesn't fit.
Yeah, because you've removed that by having that different name. But so if people want to find you online, Esther, what are the best ways to do that?
Wherever they want. My website is my main point of contact, estherjacobs.info, not .com, .info. And also social media. Instagram recently blocked my account, so I had to start all over again as no excuses lady. Anywhere, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, wherever you want, I'm there. And if people have a question or they want to share a story, or they're interested in writing their book, just let me know and we'll connect, and I'll give you some tips and help you move forward.
Fabulous. Well, it's been so much fun talking with you about your creative and positive approach to problem solving. And thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for the invitation.
Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. Create a fabulous and profitable day. What would it take?